a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. This is episode 68, covering the song Mary Long from the album Who Do We Think We Are? But I am not alone. I have an original OG member of the Deep Purple Podcast with me today, Nathan Beaudry. Nathan, how are ya?
I'm doing great, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've had a lot of fun doing this show, done a few episodes with John, and glad we could schedule something.
Me too. Yeah, this is great. I'm always looking for an opportunity to talk about this song in particular.
Yeah, and I'm curious, before we get into the song, I mean, obviously people know you well, but what I was trying to remember was, where was Deep Purple at in their catalog when you started getting into them?
Well, when we started getting into them, it would have been like the late 80s, early 90s. I want to say the most recent album out at the time was Slaves and Masters.
Oh, okay.
So, but oddly, we just kind of like didn't really pay attention to that, I think, because we were so focused on getting all the back albums.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got up to that, I think we just kind of had moved on or just, I don't know what it was about Slaves and Masters, but I think we just knew at that time, oh, there's a different singer and there's this and that. And we kind of got into the Mark II stuff, and then didn't really, I explored like Mark III and IV through John, who somehow got a copy of it, but those albums weren't really available. They weren't like, those CDs weren't in the bins. It was just in Rock and Machine Head and this album.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I started, obviously all the Mark II albums were readily available. I think Burn was, but like Come Taste the Band, we had to special order, and the only place we knew to do that was this company in Europe. It had a huge catalog, and you know, it's like, well, okay, I'll wait 2 months and hopefully like this album.
Yeah. I remember getting Come Taste the Band and being like, wow, I can't believe I actually found it. And it's not that difficult.
Right. And it's like, I felt when I got that album, when I finally got that in my hands, I felt like I had won the lottery, you know, because it was one of those just elusive things. And when I got the anthology, that was the first time I even heard anything from Come Taste the Band. I was like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to hear this album. And it was like another 5 or 6 months before I would get it. And then I was like, I kind of felt like I really needed to safeguard that album because like it was going to go away if I didn't, you know?
Yeah, I totally felt the same way. I think we ended up having to drive up to Boston and get it at one of the, either like they had like an HMV up there, and they had a really big Tower Records, like a 2 or 3 story Tower Records that had a really good selection of imports. So we got that there. But I think the first time I heard any songs from that was on the Ultimate, the Tommy Bolin box set.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then I think collection. It was just like, oh, these are Deep Purple songs from a Deep Purple album that you can't find. Like, I got to get this album now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And from the anthology, they had You Keep On Moving. And I mean, to me, and I'll get to this in the show, but that, unbeknownst to them at the time, is like the greatest final song for a band. The ending of that is just so perfect to say, we're taking a final bow, even though they didn't know it.
Yeah, totally. And for all intents and purposes, it could have ended up being the last Deep Purple song ever, but
very well could have. Yeah.
But
I'll just say to Roger, if you're listening, thinking about this new album you guys are working on, if you're going to do another tribute song for your final, that would be a good one to pick.
I think there's almost less than zero chance of that happening. But
I think, yeah, I think if there's a way I could put a negative number on my spreadsheet, it probably would be.
And the Vegas odds on that are -0.
Right. Yeah. But they'll let you bet on anything. So just
why not?
Here's the money. I'm going to give you double, and then but I'm going to half the bet, and there I've lost.
Yep, we have to wait until every member of Deep Purple dies for them to collect on it.
Yeah, although I would say it would be very interesting to hear Ian sing that song.
Or they bring Glenn in and do a duet with the two of them.
Yeah, well, considering he said he'd never talk to them again, I think that's even less likely than it being on the album.
Whose refusal would trump the others? Like like Ian Gillan agreeing to the first time ever having a guest vocalist. Well, no, I guess that's not true. They did do guest vocalists, but it's very extremely rare. And of all the people, a former Deep Purple member, I doubt it.
Well, the closest I guess they would come would be the backing singers that they've used on the more recent albums, which I thought was a really interesting addition to the sound. Especially to have like a group of female voices backing Ian up on songs like Haunted, and really kind of unexpected for Deep Purple.
Yes. Yep. For sure.
Rainbow, I could have seen that because they used, female backups on tour, but wouldn't have expected that for Purple. So that's an interesting direction. And obviously all Bob Ezrin.
Yes. The only two people that Glenn Hughes or Ian will share vocal responsibilities for are Beth Hart and Glenn Hughes.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Actually, wait a minute. Ezrin wasn't Bananas. That wasn't Bradford, was it?
That was Bradford. Yeah.
That was Bradford. Yeah. Okay. So that would have been his introduction for the band. Very interesting.
Great song.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that one. Well, you picked Mary Long for your first episode. I know that this is a favorite of yours, and we'll get into the story of it, but why did you pick this one?
Mary Long is my favorite Mark II song. I know I'm probably one of the only people on planet Earth that feel that way. But yeah, I don't know, 300 episodes or so ago whenever we did this album, I think I talked about it in detail, just kind of off the cuff because I hadn't really encapsulated my thoughts on it at that point. But now I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect on it, and having done all those episodes, I don't think my opinion has changed. I still think this is my favorite Mark II song. There was something about it, and the time that I heard it for the first time as a preteen, young teen, however old I was, hearing this kind of defiant takedown of these stupid hypocrites that were trying to silence everybody just really resonated with me. And we would have had in the US, the PMRC at that time was not new, but it was still kind of fresh. It had only been a couple, 2-3 years earlier that all these people in Washington were trying to tell rock stars what they could and couldn't say, and trying to censor people for saying things that they deemed were offensive or whatever. So hearing this song that at that point was 15 years earlier, 20 years earlier, and that they had the same kind of thing going on in England at that time, just kind of resonated with me and said, screw these people who, these politicians who tell people, you try to take the moral high ground and tell people how they can live and who they can love and what they can do and what they can say. And then when you get into it, almost inevitably, they are huge hypocrites that are doing things that are even worse,
Right.
It's always like the people that are saying, oh, you can't, show a nipple, or you can't say the word booby, but then you find out they're like into child porn and they get arrested, or they're doing some crazy embezzling, or it's always just this horrible thing. And how many times have we seen that play out?
Right. Well, I think about like Jesse Jackson finding out he had an illegitimate child. I'm like, of course he did.
Yes. Fine. Well, everyone else finding out he had.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, I have to say it's interesting, and I don't think they had the same situation in England with these two people, but I know at least in America with the PMRC, it backfired on them so badly,
Oh
and
yeah.
so many bands that no one would have ever heard of were hitting gold records, and just because you tell people you can't do something or you can't have something, and
Hmm.
that makes them want it. And I
Oh,
think that, like,
100%.
we talked recently about, like, what's the reason I want the Bananas vinyl so badly. I think
Because
that's
you
what it
can't
is.
have
It's
it.
like such a ridiculous thing to own, because it's a limited edition. It's very pricey, and I think it's more like, don't tell me I can't have this album. I think it's more of like a defiance thing than actually having a need to, because I'll never listen to it.
Oh no, if you could find it in any bargain bin for $9 or $10, I probably still would have, well, maybe I would have bought it just because, like, hey, why not? But I probably would not have even bought it. But the fact that it's $700, you're like, I need to
Right,
have it.
yeah.
Yeah, I have an alert on eBay for when one pops up, which is very rare.
Yeah.
Just in hopes that somebody not knowing will post it for like $10 and I can just snag it right up. But no, it's always like, $700 or best offer. It's like, give me a
Right.
break.
Yeah. Best offer isn't going to be $10.
Yeah, my best offer of 50. I'll go to 15.
Right, yeah. No, trust me, you don't want to deal with this hassle. And the worst thing is, though, that every time one sells, the price really kind of goes up, because whoever pays, $500-600
Yeah.
bucks for it is not going to sell it for $400. That's going to be
Exactly,
their
yeah.
base price, and it becomes more rare. So it's like it just gets worse. And I just keep hoping that at some point they're just going to reissue it and take this nonsense away. But I don't
Yeah.
know if you know, but there was another band that did their own sort of version of Mary Long, and I don't know if it was inspired by this, but Anthrax did a song kind of calling out Tipper Gore in the PMRC called Starting Up
Yep.
a Posse.
Starting up a posse. Yeah. Yeah. Good call.
Yeah. A little
They're
more
starting up a
aggressive
posse.
version.
Yes. Yeah, and very much the language obviously they were doing on purpose to, they just run through the 7 words in the chorus in a very like heavy thrash
Mhm.
chorus. Yeah, it's that's a really good observation. It is kind of and funny enough, I would have been probably listening to that album right around the time that I was listening to this one.
I spent a small time with Anthrax. They were one of those bands that I'm like, oh, this is such a great album. All right, who else we got? I just kind of,
Yeah.
I do that for some reason. I don't, if it's a band I absolutely love, like Purple, Uriah Heep, Whitesnake, I'll dig into the entire catalog. But for some reason, I do this thing with these bands where I'm like, I love this, and I don't ever want to hear anything else they do. Like, I don't know why. I still haven't figured it out.
No, I'm the same way. And there's with certain bands. With Anthrax, I was really into them up through when the Scott Bush era.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't. To me, Anthrax, even their early albums pre Belladonna were a little bit more serious. But there was something about the Belladonna era that was they were just like kind of silly, goofy, not quite a novelty band. Did some serious songs, but weren't afraid to do something silly and kind of poke fun at themselves and stuff like that. And I enjoyed that.
Mhm.
And then when they left, I know I have friends that loved the Scott Bush stuff. Not Scott. I'm saying Scott Bush. What's his name?
Not Scott
John
Ian.
Bush?
Oh, I'm not sure. The only album I
My,
really know is State of Euphoria, and then I had like an I'm the Man cassette that had 4 songs on it, like I Am the Law and Cotton Amash. But yeah, State of Euphoria, I know Killer Bees a little bit, but State of Euphoria was the one that I really know backwards and forwards. I'm like, God, this is such a great album. And like, why wouldn't I want to hear the next one? Why wouldn't, like, if you love something, they're probably going to do more that you're going to at least like. But for some reason, I just cut things off, and I'm like, I just want my comfort food.
It wasn't Attack of the Killer Bees. That was the one that Starting Up a Posse was on, right?
No, I think it was before that.
Was it?
I think so.
I thought it was that. But it's John Bush. I'm sorry.
Oh, John
Scott
Bush,
Bush is my godfather. So
I didn't know your godfather was in Anthrax. That's awesome.
Yeah, my godfather was in Anthrax. That's why my middle name is Scott.
Oh,
my godfather. So there you go.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, before we get into the song, I find this one a little less fascinating than I do wondering why people ask the band to tell them the story of Smoke on the Water when the song Smoke on the Water tells the story of Smoke on the Water. This one, I think, is at least a little more elusive if you haven't heard the story. But if you're someone like me who kind of eats up band interviews, you've heard it a lot. And
Yeah, it's probably the Deep Purple song that has the most. Well, for one thing, it's not immediately obvious what it
right.
is. So
Yeah.
it's very cleverly done combining these two people into one person.
Mhm.
But of course, when I was a kid, I didn't know what the hell was going on with this sort of stuff in the 70s in England. So I had no idea. I thought Mary Long was a fictional character that they made up to like fill the role of, and in a way she is,
Right.
uh, but based very much on these two characters in real life.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought it was just like we kind of made this like a punching bag that we're gonna we're gonna attack, and in a way they were just doing it in a, which is what I think is so clever about it, is that they combine them into this, they combine their names into this one name that's much easier to sing and goes better with the song. And it's something that whether you know the backstory or not, you can relate to, because everyone knows Hypocrites, and that was like,
Mhm.
one of the things that, and it's probably still to this day, but as a kid and as an early teenager, I was just like hypocrisy was like the worst thing in the world, and now
Right.
we're just surrounded by it every day. But
Well, especially by the people that are telling us how
yeah,
morality works.
yeah, and this is how you need to live. This
Mhm.
is the one true right way to live. And I'm going to tell you how to do it, and you can't do anything else. You can't love in a different way, live in a different way, all that. It's just and it still goes on today.
Oh yeah.
It's like I said, you can set your watch by it. That person that's out there right now preaching about, about how great religion is, or how we have to live this moral life, I can guarantee you there'll be a bombshell dropping on them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but
Yeah.
it'll come out and they'll be disgraced, and then you move on to the next idiot.
I just wonder, in today's world, it's got to be harder to hide that, right? With the internet and research and everything else we have at our fingertips. It's not like it was in the 70s. I mean, it's got to be harder to get away with it. But I also think people don't care as much. I mean, I feel like it's almost like you're kind of cool if you've got some skeletons in your closet now, whereas before it's like, haha, gotcha. And now it's like, oh, cool,
Maybe,
like you had a
yeah.
kid.
It could be, but it's just also like it does seem like people think they're not going to get caught when the receipts are so much easier to get a hold of these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you've got people that are protecting you, and I mean, think about even rock stars. Like you go back to like the days of Come Taste the Band, where they actually had to hire handlers for Glenn and Tommy to keep them out of trouble. And
Right.
you can kind of do whatever you want because there's somebody there that's going to make it okay. It's like that really changes your mindset about how to live.
Yeah, and they kept all of that stuff very quiet, to the
Mhm.
point where even people in the band, I don't think, knew how bad it was.
Yeah.
Like they knew it was bad, but they didn't know how bad it was, particularly with Tommy. But
Mhm.
they would make up, oh, they're, and you used to hear this a lot maybe 20 years ago. Oh yeah, the artist is um they're recovering from exhaustion or dehydration, and it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
no, they're not.
Yeah, see, now they
It's
just say,
got to be
well,
something
they
else.
took an Ambien before the red carpet event, and that's why they fell over. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. It's always some, yeah, it's some, I guess that's what PR people are for, to protect your image. Yeah, they're always just saying, "Oh, he's got a." They'll say anything. They're sick. They're ill. They're going back
Mhm.
home to recuperate. Hmm.
And that's one thing I did find quite fascinating when I lived in Los Angeles, and kind of got a little bit behind the curtain and saw how the behind the scenes of some of that works. And I'm like, what's it going to be? Is it going to be Ambien? Is it going to be a Zoloft? Is it going to be, like just pick your poison as to the excuse for why you said this stupid thing that you shouldn't have said. Instead of just going, you know what? Here's why I said it. I didn't mean it. It was in the moment. I had a lot on my mind. There's cameras flashing in my face. Like instead of just doing that, it's like, well, we have to come up with this other thing to make it more forgivable sounding instead of just the truth.
Yeah, and as I get older, I get it. But I think then I think I've just always maybe appreciated people that are genuine and that
Mhm.
have some vulnerability and that can
Yeah.
admit they made a mistake,
Mhm.
just and you see that now with, what do I have right here? I got Glenn Hughes's book.
Mhm.
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He
Yeah.
says exactly. I can't imagine it was worse than what he's writing in his book, because, and if it is, if he is sugarcoating it, then good Lord. But he says in just brutal detail exactly what he was doing. He owns it all.
Mhm.
He's not, trying to blame anybody. He's like, I had great loving parents. I was surrounded by, I was so lucky. I had all these great opportunities. I've got all this, there's ego there, but it's justified. I've got this great talent. I've got all this, I have all this, but some people's brains are just wired when they get drugs. That's it. That's like that. This is what's been missing my whole life. And I need, this is what I need all the time. And some people can just be like, oh, I tried cocaine. That was cool. On to the next thing. And,
Right. I guess that's it.
why
Like,
I've never done it. I
yeah,
don't want to
here.
know that, oh, this is what's been missing.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's really like what makes you jump that fence the first time. After
Yeah.
you've done it, I can see everything else being fair game. But
Mhm.
like, what gets you to do it the very first time? And that, I think, I mean, it's a line that I could never cross, but I guess that's always the big question for me. But I love the honesty of it. I mean, to just own it and say, I did this. This is not anyone else's fault. I kept doing it because I loved it. I totally respect it. And that's why I love people like Jennifer Lawrence, who I think just even maybe by accident, she's just very honest. And
Mhm.
yeah, dude, I'm a goofball and I have no shame in saying it.
Yep.
Well, before we get into the song, we can now revisit Deep Purple on Rockline in 1985, promoting Perfect Strangers, the very night before I saw them for the first time in Detroit. They were on Rockline with Bob Coburn, and somebody called in and asked about Mary Long.
Oh.
We're going to play a song from the album Who Do You Think We Are? And it's a song called Mary Long. And I understand that there's an interesting story behind this. Why don't you relate that to us?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, Ian Gillan here, as far as I can remember, Mary Long is really a name which is made up as a compilation of two people in England who really got on our nerves at the time, got on my nerves particularly. And it's Mary Whitehouse and Lord Longford, hence the name Mary Long. Mary Whitehouse is a sort of female Jimmy Swaggart, the ultimate god botherer and the ultimate sort of annoyance who wants everyone to wear more than one set of clothes in case the first set falls off and all that sort of thing. And I mean, indecency was really, just stepping outside your front door as far as she was concerned. Lord Longford used to visit prisons and try and release mass murderers, because he thought they were hard done by. And in my opinion, they were the most hypocritical people. And they remind me a lot of all the sort of people you meet in, we meet anyway, when we're travelling around in airports, you get out of a plane, you go down and all these people rush up to you. And if there's one thing I hate in this world, it's good and niceness. And, I don't mean, you know what I mean, though? I don't mean good things. I mean people who just want to be good. It just gets right up my nose. And I say to these people, it's not your cause I hate, because most of them have got wonderful causes, it's just them personally.
Purely personal, yeah. Purely personal.
They just get right up my nose. And that's the sort of song about, because I think they're hypocrites, and it's maybe an overgeneralization, because I'm sure a lot of them want to do a lot of good. But I just hate people who do good and want to be seen to be doing good. If you want to do good, then you should go about it quietly, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's a big difference between people who just want to make a difference and people who want to go, hey, look, I'm making a difference.
Right. Are you doing it for the people you're trying to help, or are you doing it for your own ego and your own your PR? It could be very PR related. And at the end of the day, if they're doing good, I guess it's a good thing they have a big ego, because why else would they do it? There's so many people in this world that have so much that don't care either way. They won't even do it so they can look good.
Right.
They're just like, no, I'm going to keep my, $200 billion to myself and not try to help those people that are needy or hungry or whatever. So yeah, I guess it's better to give, even if it's for selfish reasons.
Yeah, because at least somebody's benefiting. But it kind of reminds me of that clip from The Simpsons with Mr. Burns with the barbecue, and he's like, I'll give $1 million to charity when pigs fly. And then the pig flies by and Smithers is like, we'd be donating that money now. So he's like, no, I think I'll keep the $1 million.
You almost have to respect that. But at the same time, it's infuriating because there's so much good that can be done with it. And there are people, there's kind of like those open secrets that you wonder, are they open secrets or is that the PR kind of leaking it to achieve the same results of these very, very wealthy people who make anonymous donations to various causes? I know there were a few when we lived in New York, and I can't remember of anybody offhand, but these very wealthy people that it was a kind of an open secret that this person was donating to, homelessness or people in poverty or, food insecurity, whatever it is. And I always, cynically wondered, is it a secret in quotes because the PR people are like, I think it might be blah, blah, blah. But, I think it's also, like we were talking about earlier, in this day and age, very hard to hide anonymous things like that, whether they're for good or bad.
Well, I remember I was working for a Fortune 500 company in Arizona years ago, and they were doing this thing where they were doing these like packs for children, little like basic stuff for I think it was for kids in an orphanage or something like that, like toothpaste and a little toy and a little backpack with some essentials and a couple of fun things. And I thought that's such a cool thing. I really want to help. But they were doing this huge raffle to get people to donate. There was like a large screen television set and all these prizes. And I'm like, how much more could you give these children if, I don't know, maybe you weren't spending money? I'm sure you got great deals on them or whatever, or even some of these prizes were donated. But geez, like just give all this to the kids. Like you shouldn't need incentive to just do good things. So I worked a later shift than everyone else. I was the last one in the office. And so I just put like a $20 bill in an envelope and I wrote on there, to the person that was hosting this thing, I'm like, this is for the kids, and just stuck it under their keyboard. And I come into work the next day and there's this envelope: to whoever generously donated this money in this envelope, please let me know who you are so I could put your name on for the raffle. And I'm like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
This went on for 2 weeks. It was like every day. It was like, who, I still don't know who this person is. I'm like, exactly. You don't know. They just want to help. Like, it would be nice to have a large screen television, but you know what? That's not, I just want to help these kids. And like, this is kind of the problem. It's not about taking credit. It's about just doing something good.
Yep.
So I totally feel in on that point. But we're not done with Rockline, because in 1987, Deep Purple returned, and I believe this was promoting the House of Blue Light. And it's Who Do We Think We Are, not Who Do You Think We Are, Bob?
Yes. I like, who do you think you are?
And this is another person calling in and asking about Mary Long. This one's a little more interesting.
And let's take that call from Santa Ana now. It's Paul. He's listening to 95.5 KLOS. Hi, Paul.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Good, Paul. Good.
All right, that's excellent. I wanted to compliment you, Mr. Roger Glover, on your bass guitar technique. I think you're fantastic. And Mr. Gillen, I think your voice sounds better than ever.
Well, thank you very much.
And I really mean that. I think.
Thank you so much.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say, it's a total privilege to be talking to the very founders of heavy metal. It's fantastic. These questions, I have a two-part question here, and it goes out to you, Mr. Gillen. Who is Mary Proud? And I think she's bumming. Oh, what I'm saying is, like on your one of your very few albums, not your very few, but your first 4 albums, I believe, you have a song called Mary Proud.
Mary Long.
You a real person?
Mary Long, yeah.
Oh, Mary.
Yeah, Mary Long.
Proud.
Mary Long is in fact a collage. It's a combination of two people. Two people in England who, at the time, were probably the two most annoying people in the media that I could think of in the public eye. That was Mary Whitehouse, who's basically a clean-up TV personality, and Lord Longford, who's basically an old prat and a godbotherer. And they got together and they basically just make life miserable for everyone. And so the compilation of the two names, Lord Longford and Mary Whitehouse, became Mary Long, and this person was the subject of my irritation.
And I think, actually, as far as Paul's concerned, the song he's getting mixed up with is Proud Mary. used by Creedence Clearwater Revival. That's not even a color.
Oh, that's about another woman entirely.
You know, I have to say, before anybody like picks on this poor guy, think about, you know, we didn't have access to these people back then. I mean, it's different. Like Nate, you and I have been in a room with Roger Glover and Don Airey, and we've met Glenn, and you know, it's always a weird thing to spend time with somebody who you spend so much time with apart from them. You know, and we've looked at their pictures, we've listened to their interviews, and to be in a room with them is something. But in 1987, to be able to call into a radio show and actually talk to these people who were completely inaccessible.
Yeah.
And you're live on the air and there's hundreds of thousands of people listening. I mean, that's like a lot of pressure, which is why I remember when I tried to call in, I had everything written down because I was like, I know I'm going to screw this up. I'll just be like, you know, so don't be too hard on the guy. But I do love the Creedence Clearwater Revival part. That was fun.
I think he actually called into Creedence Clearwater Revival too, and he's like, "You have your song Long Mary. What's that about?"
I think you're thinking of Long Tall Sally, but
no, it is. I used to. I mean, I guess I still do, but work. I teach like interviewing skills.
Oh.
And one of the things I teach about, not the kind of interviews you do, but like but like interviewing for a job, you know, and so being on the other end, and especially when you do like a panel interview and there might be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on the panel, you go in there with your best plan about what you're going to do or what you're going to say, and then you can just lock up. You know, it's very easy. Even something simple like handing out packets or handing out your resume, all of a sudden you're like, your hands are shaking, things like that. So about the preparation process, about having notes in front of you, even for simple things, because you'd be amazed at how your mind can go blank or you can mess things up. And it's the same thing with, you know, speaking to your heroes, you know, it can be very, very, and not only your heroes, but your, you know, it's one thing when we've met these guys, but we didn't meet them while we were being recorded on live TV or live radio.
Right,
so you've got that angle too, which is, you know, nerve wracking.
Yeah, I one thing that I absolutely love about our trip to Detroit and Chicago last year was that you got Roger to do the promo for the Deep Purple podcast, and actually like just watching him do it, go, what do I say? Just say anything. It's like, okay. He just does it, and every time I hear that, I just go right back to that moment. And I
was
that
directing
is so cool.
Roger. That's the biggest collaboration I'll ever have with
right, yeah. Like, I know you know how to do the butterfly ball and all that, but let me tell you how I want you to do this.
Okay, picture this. I want you standing right here.
Okay, now do it again
because he just did the pa 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 pa. Because I think he saw the little. Actually, the recorder's right here.
Oh yeah,
the little windscreen. So I think he sees it. He knows it's to avoid those pops. So he just went pop, 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 pop right into it. And luckily it worked.
Yeah. I thought it was because it was the Deep Purple podcast. Like there was a lot of P's and he was just Deep Purple podcast, you know.
Oh, maybe that was it.
Yeah. Either way, it turned out great. And that was really cool. And then I just love that whenever that you play that clip, I'm like, that was a cool moment.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. I just feel bad for you because you carried those records around. You never got anything signed.
I know. I did. Yeah, because you just don't know who you're going to run into or what's going to happen. I just had like a bunch of, and I was, you know, I don't know. I'm not big on autographs anyway, so I didn't really. I was like, if the thing presents itself and people start signing things, I might be like, hey, could you sign this and that? But I was like, you know what? Having the time to actually chat and absorb that and be in the moment is so much more important than having them write their name on something, you know?
Yeah. You really don't know what to expect. I mean, I was really excited that I got to meet Don Airey, which I did not expect. And, I mean, I didn't know he would be out there. I'd get a chance to talk to him. And, I kind of regret not walking over and talking to Simon because he was there the first night. And, I kind of feel like, but I was like, I don't know what the etiquette is here.
Right.
And I kind of, but Bethany and Graham did ask me to tell Don hello. So I kind of felt like I had an okay to do that.
Yes. Yes. So like I had gotten a chance a couple years back during one of their very first shows to chat with Simon very briefly. Didn't just how I just told him how much his new The Fighter had just come out, and I told him how much I really enjoyed it, and I think he signed the CD for me back there.
Nice.
But just talked to him very briefly, and then Rich talked to him about the picks that he gives out, for his nephew, and he told him that story and took a picture and everything. So it was very brief. But that time when we were with him in Detroit, he was actually he was talking with a guitar student that he was giving Zoom lessons during COVID.
Oh, wow.
And did you not hear that story?
I didn't know.
Oh, so the two people that had come were a guy and his girlfriend or wife, I can't remember what, that he was doing Zoom guitar lessons during COVID because all these musicians were out of work. He didn't have anything to do. And this was one of his guitar students. So they kept in touch and had like a correspondence and said, we're going to be playing in your area. And so they were guests of Simon. So I don't think we knew that until after we talked to them after the meet.
Okay.
But yeah, you could tell he was like chatting with them. So you don't want to interrupt. You don't know what the relationship is, because these were like the personal guests of specific members. So you don't want to interrupt that.
Yeah, this isn't like the meet and greet afterwards in the green room with the press pass and all that. These are like personal invitations.
Right. Which was really cool. It was before the show, and it was, the people just like, meeting with them. I don't know who Don was meeting with that day, but the second show he was meeting with the folks from the Chicago Electric Piano Company, I think is the name of it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which was really cool because I had been following them on Instagram for years, and I had no idea who they were. And then they talked to me. I was like, oh yeah. And then I chatted with them more than I chatted with anybody else. They just have really cool videos. They sell and repair vintage synthesizers and Mellotrons and all sorts of stuff. And they just post these really cool videos. So,
and those guys were really cool too.
Yeah.
But the couple that was there to see, was that the couple that we hung out with and talked to for a while?
Yeah, it was amazing. And the woman had never seen Deep Purple before.
Yeah. So, I didn't realize that was why they were there. Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah. Cool. Wow. Well, let's check out some Mary Long. This is going to start a little quiet because it has a nice little keyboard intro. And I try to think too, it's interesting because the way that you guys do your show, you play the album in succession. This is an individual episode for each show. So the one thing that I'm missing is that continuity of going from one song into another. So thinking about like Woman from Tokyo fading out and then this song fading in, it's actually a very nice transition on the album.
Yeah.
Here it is, Mary Long. I've noticed going through these songs and, since I'm really isolating them and thinking about the individual track, I've noticed how many of their songs just have a quick introduction and boom, we're into the story. And I think about so many like classic rock bands that are like, the vocals don't even start for 45 or 50 seconds. And Deep Purple's like, here's what the song's going to be. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's not even really, it's just, that's like a little, that'll be brought back as like a little I don't know what you call it, like a transition between the verse and the chorus, or the end of the chorus. I can't remember what, but I love that little synth beginning. It sounds like it's just something arpeggiated on a Moog or something. But it's very, to me, I don't know that we've heard synth like this in a Deep Purple song up to this point.
I would say no. And
it's only been piano and organ at this point, and then you just get this, this ending, like you said, of Woman from Tokyo, and then it's like, whoa, wait, what's this? This is new.
Mm-hmm. I think there's been like a background sound or two that he just might have used for a little bit of color, but as far as like a primary instrument or intro, not at all. He gets really into that in the next album, but I'm wondering if maybe there was just something in the studio. And he's like, let me play around with this. And then, kind of came up with that intro because it has an organ-like feel to it, but it doesn't really have that sound.
Yeah, I'm thinking it has to be a synth. And I know my my friend Ovis would know because he's the maybe world's expert right now on John Lord's gear, so he could probably tell me exactly what he's using right there. But yeah, it's got to be one of the first times, and the only other time on this album that's jumping out at me right now is probably Rat Bat Blue, where
Mhm.
they do that. And that I don't even know for sure if it's synth or if it's sped up organ or what it. But it's a
Yeah.
very these are two very unique sounds that we've never really heard before from the band on this album.
Yeah, and it's interesting because so many bands were very heavily into synthesizers. You know, John Lord was one of the few people that really didn't get into it for a long time. When he does, he really does.
Mhm.
But it's kind of like, you know, sometimes when new technology comes out, and I had this happen to me, I was working on what would have been the first Mental Sauna album, and I was just getting into virtual instruments at that time. And then there was a big sale, and I got a bunch, and then that album turned into something completely different just because of, oh, I could add this, and oh, look, I got this sound now, and you know, it really shaped that project. And yeah, it's understandable how that would happen, especially if you're like, you know, you can make a lot of different sounds on a Hammond, but there's still a certain basic foundational feel to it. You
And
get
these
like an Art
things are
Odyssey, and they're crazy.
yeah, exactly. These items were so expensive
Yeah.
back then, which now can be emulated virtually very inexpensively. So I was much the same way. You get a new toy or a new instrument or whatever, and you feel like you have to use it because you spent this money on it. Now I feel like we've come full circle and everything is so available. Like I used to just collect plugins and instruments and all this sort of stuff. And then you reach a point where like, why? Like I'm spending more time collecting these than I am using them.
Yeah.
So it's just like when I get to a point where I need to use it, I'll try to get it or buy it or whatever. But just doing the music or the production the way that you want to do it and you know, layer that stuff in as needed. You don't need I have hardly any plugins right now on my computer. I use almost everything that's on board
Good.
and it's almost all I need.
Yeah, I've been thinking lately I really need to do kind of a just take stock of everything I've got and make some notes on what it is, what it does, because it's like, oh, it's only $5. I'm sure I'll use that. Or, you know, this library is only $10. It's on sale or whatever.
Yep.
And I've got, I mean, a spreadsheet full of them. And I just kind of need to go through and catalog because I just scored a short film. And I was looking for certain sounds that I know I have, and I'm like digging and digging and digging. And of course, they name these things in ways that you would never find what they are. So it's
Yep.
not like you can just go onto your hard drive and search for kazoo, because it's not going to be called kazoo. It's going to be called space flute.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like I really need to do that. And yeah, I agree. It's just one of those things that you can get overwhelmed with. And I think that's a big thing, especially going into the 80s where they were starting to become a little more plentiful and a little bit more affordable, and I think that really fueled the British New Wave movement.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get into the vocal section of Mary Long, because I think that opening is killer. I mean, it sets the tone that this track is going to be kick-ass right off the bat.
Mary Long is a hypocrite. She does all the things that she tells us not to do. Selling filth from a corner shop and knitting patterns to the high street queue. She paints roses, even makes them smell good, and then she draws titties on the wall. Drowns kittens just to get a thrill and writes sermons in the Sunday Chronicle.
One thing that I find fascinating about these guys, and I'll have to see if it happens as the song goes on, but they typically start the first verse very simply. It's very basic. And then as they do each verse, there's a build. Like you just listen to Roger. He's just playing one note through that, just keeping a nice rhythm, really heavy bass sound, which I absolutely love. But I know come the last verse, he's going to be all up and down that neck.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I just like, you know, you and I are very similar, as is John, that we're not big lyrics guys, but every so often there's a song where the lyrics really jump out at me, and this is one of them. And there's not many songs, even some of my favorite songs, where I know all the lyrics. And this is another one where it's like, yeah, I can sing every line of this song, and you'd have done the, you know, a lot of it's very British. So you got to kind of understand that. And a lot of it is relevant to what was going on then. So it's not something that immediately I knew exactly what he was talking about, but over the years of kind of it together. There's still parts I don't really quite understand, and I think it could be kind of almost cheesy that it opens up with Mary Long as a hypocrite. It's like, okay, we're not
Yeah.
we're not being metaphorical at all here. He's
Yeah.
just putting it right on the table. But then he just kind of over the next few verses just lays out example after example of her being a hypocrite, but I think does it in really clever ways.
Yeah.
Saying that, she's selling filth from a corner shop, but then she's painting roses, but then she's drawing titties on the bathroom wall, all that sort of stuff. So it's like he's painting this image of this woman who's out there preaching to everybody, and he adds what he ends with, like she's basically writing sermons in the Sunday paper, while after she's drowning kittens in the line before it. So I like this kind of back and forth of painting this image of this woman, and obviously it's accentuated. This Mary Whitehouse was a huge hypocrite, or honestly, I don't even know if it was so much that she was hypocritical. I don't know that there was all these scandals about her, but that do-good nature that he hated. So he's like almost saying, well, probably she's doing this on the one hand while she's doing that.
Right.
So I don't know that it was like this as out as some of the people we've already mentioned. Like he mentioned Jimmy Swaggart and stuff, which I think was a great way to relate it to not only Americans, but Americans in the 80s versus Brits in the 70s. Like Jimmy Swaggart was that perfect example of someone that was just like this. But yes, anyway, I love this like kind of breaking down of all these different things that she does and how it makes her such a hypocrite.
And of course, one of the visuals that I get is I remember seeing like Pat Robertson on television in this humongous church, saying we need money.
Yep.
I'm like, how'd you get that room?
Exactly.
It is a fascinating story. And I think the one thing that is true, which I'll point out when we get to that in the lyrics, but this is kind of, he's a great storyteller. And this is kind of halfway between speaking and singing, because it is lyrical. It does have some words that are a little bit drawn out, but he's almost kind of talking almost a little bit more like he did in No One Came.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of that, because it's like he does all the things that she tells us not to do. And then he kind of he kind of makes it into a singing, but it is almost like he's it's almost like he's rapping at a certain point. It's almost kind of like you said, No One Came, or Sergeant Pepper, something like that, where it's very rhythmic and talking, but given that he's got that great voice, he can throw in those little flourishes.
And I mean, honestly, his delivery as a vocalist, I don't know if we learn how to do that just naturally by listening to, whoever we learn from, or if it's something that, some people actually get taught how to do. But it just feels so natural, the way that he puts the lyrics together. I mean, the episode hasn't aired yet, but when I recorded the Smooth Dancer episode, that's one of the things that I talked about, especially in that song, because there's a lot of lyrics in a small space. When he gets to that, I think you're crazy, you're two-time in ways they don't bother me. And I love the delivery of that, because the placement is so important in those kind of words when you're shoving a lot into a small space. You and I recorded an episode on Haskingcast podcast for the Busta Rhymes album. And I mean, talk about somebody who knows how to fit words into a tiny space. That guy's ridiculous.
Yeah, I forgot what it was, but I put all the lyrics into a sheet and had you guess how many pages it was. And I can't remember what it was, but it was like something like 40 pages long.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous.
If you did that same thing with this album, it would probably be like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah, it really would. I mean, there's a lot going on, but he has just such an amazing way of presenting the story that, while I'm not generally a lyrics guy, when I found these albums, I think it wasn't until I started getting into Cirque du Soleil where I started realizing that the lyrics don't matter as much as how that sound makes me feel. When I started looking at the vocals more as an instrument, because their lyrics are gibberish. They're not real words. So you start looking at it going, okay, this is like me listening to a song in Chinese or, an African language or something, where it's like, I don't understand anything they're talking about, but how does the inflection make me feel? And whereas this is a little more straightforward storytelling.
Yeah, there's a few artists that do music in a different language that I really love. One of my favorites is this band called Movitz. They're They're Swedish band. It's basically like a Swedish hip hop band, but they play saxophones and do kind of like jazz music too. And they will pepper in English words throughout, but it's 95% in Swedish. No idea what they're talking about, but
Yeah.
I love their albums. Every time they come out with a new album, I'm excited. I've talked to our friend Jonathan Hedlund about them, and he's on occasion been, because he's familiar with them because they're probably bigger in Sweden.
Sure.
But he's kind of let me know what some songs are about, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's. I'm like, I hope they're not really like they're just like huge racists or something, like singing terrible stuff I'm listening to. But no, I mean they're very very interesting to listen to. I love their stuff, and I was like, it would be a good podcast to break down their music with somebody who speaks Swedish. Like, Jonathan, tell me, what have I been singing or humming along to all these years?
I speak very little French, and a friend of mine who used to be in one of the Cirque shows, who had moved to Canada, was back visiting, and we had gone up to Vegas and visited one of her friends that was also in Cirque, and she was from France. And I literally sat there for an hour and a half just listening to them have a discussion in French. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I enjoyed the hell out of just how the language sounded and the inflections in their voices, and when they got excited and when they were, kind of like, oh, and did you hear about that? You could get that sense of what they were, generally what they were saying. And I'm like, this is such a beautiful thing.
This dummy doesn't know what we're saying.
Right, yeah, look at that guy in the corner. But I mean, there's such a beauty to language that the meaning doesn't necessarily always matter. It's just that flow of the words, and that's really what singing is. It's just a flow of words.
Yep, and you can tell if something's angry or hopeful or whatever. Even sometimes, like, having listened, that's probably the non-English thing I've listened to the most is the band Movits, and I can even tell when there's like, oh, I think he just did something kind of cheeky there, but I don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing
like,
you kind of can't always tell.
You can tell he's probably very clever with that line, but I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think the most I listen to foreign vocally would be like Roma music or music from like gypsy music. It's very, very interesting, and there's a episode I did about one of those albums, and it's just a fascinating sound to their language because it's very sing-songy. But anyway, back to Mary Long. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I do have to say this before Mary Long. This does tie in with Ian Gillan. Is many years ago, I was 20 something years ago, I was working in a kitchen, and I went back there, and one of the women was listening to. I was like, oh, it's Jesus Christ Superstar. And then the lyrics come in, but they're all in Spanish, which made sense because she was Spanish as a first language. I was like, oh, this is crazy. And so I'm listening along and singing along. And she's like, oh, you know this? I'm like, yeah, but I've never heard it in Spanish before. So I went out and got the Spanish version of it because I was like, this is cool to listen to it because it's almost like experiencing it a different way. And it's like, well, I know what they're saying. It's probably not a direct one-for-one translation, but I know what they're saying. So it was really interesting. And then I found the Japanese version, which was actually kind of hilarious. The guy that does Judas is amazing. And I think it's the Chairman Kaga from the Iron Chef is one of the, he's either Judas or Jesus, I think. Don't quote me on that. Wow. But so listening to these different ones, it was very interesting because it's like almost like you could get the experience of listening to Jesus Christ Superstar for the first time, but you're listening to it in a different language. And the instrumentation was a little different, but it wasn't like a karaoke. It was like they did the whole instruments and everything. Wow. But it was very interesting, a very cool way to listen to it and focus on it in a way you never did before because the words are not your own.
Yeah, and the flow of it would be completely different. I mean, it's obviously written for the English language, so whenever you translate it, the syllables are different, the emphasis is going to be different, and that really changes the dynamic of the songs.
They kept it very close, like rhythmically. Like sometimes you see a movie that's dubbed into English match the lips like perfectly.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though, and they usually have to take some liberties to do that. So they managed to make it like something that I could sing along to still, but it was, it's interesting. It's definitely worth doing if you're a fan of Jesus Christ Superstar as we are.
Okay, so quick side story. I was hired to do an overdub for a film, and it was these people that won a contest in, I think it was China, to have their animated film dubbed into English. So
Oh, wow.
I was tasked with my partner on that project, and I were tasked with basically making that happen. And so the screenwriter that they hired to adapt it, took their script and just rewrote it in English, which would be
Mhm.
fine, except there's a huge timing difference
Yes.
in
Yep.
how long it takes to say things. And
Mhm.
so we were left with, 3 or 4 words in English, but like 5 or 6 seconds of mouth movement on the screen. And
It's like those really bad dubbed kung fu movies.
yes, and that's how it happens, because there's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
actual rewrite of the story that would fit the visual in English, keep true to the story, but actually work with the visual. It's very, very
Mhm.
difficult to do. So that was a fun project that I enjoyed doing and just can't watch.
You have to tell me what it is offline so I can watch it.
I will send you the link. Mary Long.
How did you lose your virginity, Mary Long? When will you lose your stupidity, Mary Long?
I call that a regrouping point. So it's that thing that they've defined musically where they're like, okay, we're going to solo, we're going to do this or that, and then we're all going to come back together and regroup on this point to transition into the next verse or chorus or solo or whatever it's going to be. And they're really good at those.
Yes. Yeah. It's awesome. Perfectly done. I love that was the line I remember so distinctly, being in my buddy Paul's bedroom and we were like playing video games or something and listening to this. And I just remember that line so much. Like, how did you lose your virginity? And I was like, that's the one that kind of made me turn my head. And as you learn what the kind of song's about, and I can't remember if there was like a lyrics sheet in the CD or whatever, but as I looked into it, it was just, I thought that was so shocking, but also clever to be like, you speak out so much about sex and anything sexual and anything indecent. What's like, well, you have children. How did that happen? How did
Right.
you lose your virginity if sex is so bad?
Yeah.
I don't think the follow-up line's quite as good. How will you lose your stupidity? I get it, but not as clever.
Yeah, I like the line. It's a good follow-up, but I think, yeah, it's weaker than the preceding line for sure.
Right, which is clever. It's just this, all these people clearly with children. It's like, well, we know you've had sex at least 1, 2, 3, 4
Right,
times.
yeah. See, the first time I heard the song, not knowing the backstory or what it was about, I was like, don't you know? Like, I would think you would know how that happens, Ian. And if not, I'm sure
Yeah.
David Coverdale could tell you. It just listen to Slide It In album. You're good.
Yes.
I see a Deep Purple poster. I don't think I've noticed this behind you, but it has like the Deep Purple, both of their logos in front of the Stormbringer and then the In Rock on the bottom.
Yes, it's
I had that poster. Do you remember where you got it? Was that in an album?
I saw it somewhere, so I got it on eBay a while back. I just liked it because it has the Stormbringer artwork and logo, the Deep Purple Perfect Strangers logo right underneath that, then the End Rock. So yeah, it's a good combination. It's Perfect Strangers Tour 85.
Yeah, maybe I got it at Spencer's or something, but I remember having that poster.
Yeah, it's a
Great
cool one.
poster. Yeah.
But it's a English size, so I need to get like a special frame for it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Right. Yeah, it's a cool lyric. I just like how he's really direct and just calls her out. Like, he's not sugarcoating a whole lot in this song. He's pretty much like, you fucking everything up.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Mary told Johnny not to write such trash and said it was a waste of public money. She made a fuss, they made apologies, but everybody thought the show was funny. When the nation knew you'd have children, it came as such a surprise. We really didn't know you'd had it in you. How you did it, we can only surmise.
We haven't talked about the music really in this, but this is such a great background. I mean, it's not intruding on the vocals, but it's really active and kind of jammy at the same time.
Yeah, it's got like Richie kind of strumming out those chords, and then like bam, 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 the organ kind of doing those little kind of semi staccato chord stabs. Roger doing his normal underappreciated and almost lost in the mix bass playing, which is amazing. I love the chord progression of this, and I just love the dun dun dun. It keeps returning to that little thing, which is not super far off of something like Smoke on the Water. It's just another G minor pentatonic sort of thing going on here. Very simple, but just brilliant.
Well, I think they're a band that I mean, they can have some technicality, they can feel a little bit progressive, but they also show a lot of times the simplicity that you could put in a song and make it beautiful. And they're so good at these rhythms that where you're kind of crossing melody and rhythm at the same time, but they're really, when they're backing a vocalist, a lot of times they're just hitting these rhythms that are so supportive and so non-intrusive, but yet interesting and energetic on their own. If the vocals weren't there, I would still enjoy listening to that as an instrumental. I mean, an instrumental doesn't always have to be flashy solos and all that, but just even what they're playing behind Ian is really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think this is just like the pure chemistry of this band working together, where you could have a very simple chord progression. You've got G minor, B flat, C, E flat, and it's probably just about it until you get to the chorus. And you just chart those out, and it could be super boring. But if you've got these four guys playing it together, Richie doing his thing, John doing his thing, and the interplay between them, they can make 3-chord progression, 4-chord progression sound purple, just by the way that they're playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really amazing as I'm digging through these songs and kind of really learning to appreciate all the aspects of it, instead of, like, if it's a lyrical song, sometimes your focus goes to the lyrics. If it's a real good riff, sometimes you just focus on that. Trying to focus on everything while you're just casually listening to a song is pretty impossible when you've got a band that has this many things going on at the same time. And they interplay very well together, but each individual musician is really contributing. They're not just holding a chord or, knocking out a riff and repeating it. It's always interesting. There's flourishes, there's accents, there's things that they do that they're just not I've said it so many times, they're just not a copy and paste band like so many songs that I've heard.
Yeah, and it's so common nowadays because it's easy to do. But yeah, every single run through of every chord progression is different, and it's got subtle differences. But going back to lyrics, though, I just love this one. It's just this, she's scolding somebody for writing something that's dirty and saying it's a waste of money. And then, she makes this big fuss, and then the people have to apologize. And then it's like, so it's kind of, I don't know, poking fun isn't the right word, but he's kind of lampooning this whole theater that goes on with it. Is she calls somebody out for saying or doing something, they have to go through this whole this whole theater of apology. And we see that even nowadays. I'm sorry that I did that, and then it's just like, who cares? They're just going to go right back to it anyway. But that I love the ending about having children, and I love the line, we really didn't know you'd had it in you,
Yeah, because it's kind of a double entendre, right? It's got the physical meaning, and I think that's one of the most brilliant lines I think that he's ever written.
It's genius. And of course, if you said that to Roger, he'd be like, "That was my line."
Yeah, I have no doubt of that. In fact, I remember
was.
When I was talking to Graham Bonnet, I said one of the lines that I absolutely love on Down to Earth is, "I've learned to live with a cloud above my head," and he goes, "That was Roger Glover."
Yep, it's almost always you can put your money on it, but
exactly.
It's great because it's like when people found out you were pregnant and having children, were like so surprised, like how is that possible from the woman who hates anything sexual so much?
But I'm guessing she was married, because if she wasn't, that would have been a much bigger scandal, I think.
Yes, She was married one to one man from 1940 until 2000. So
Oh wow.
you gotta give her credit there. I mean, she stuck by her guns. 60-year marriage, and the only reason it ended is because he died, and she lived to be 91. So it's
Jeez.
hey, you got to hand it to her there.
He's probably afraid to leave her.
Exactly. Yeah, and who knows what he was doing?
I mean, I can't say that he probably wasn't submissive as a man in that relationship. But it's interesting because when you look at the relationship dynamics, people who are in a job or publicly, their persona have to be very dominant. A lot of times they turn out to be very much the opposite in the bedroom. So like maybe she was very aggressive and very dominant publicly or in her position. But then in the bedroom, she might be like, "Hey, I'm your plaything." Who knows?
Oh boy, I don't know if Ian Gillan wants to think about that.
There's a song for you, Ian.
It's a sequel. Maybe in the next album we'll get Mary Long 2. Please don't do that.
Again, Roger, if you're listening, here's another opportunity for you.
Oh, unbelievable ideas we're having here for you.
We're fixing all the problems.
How did you lose your virginity, Mary Long? When will you lose your stupidity, Mary Long?
Okay, before we get into Richie's solo, I want to ask you, what do you think overall of the production on this album? Because it sounds very different from Machine Head and Fireball and everything else. It's got a little bit more gain, a little more clarity to it on the EQ, whereas I've always felt that Machine Head had a little bit of a muted feeling to it. And then we've got like the toms sound, I don't know how they were processed, but they sound a little bit bigger in the mix than normal. There's parts where this album feels like it's kind of clipping or about to clip and is just squashed back just enough to where it doesn't distort. It's a really interesting sound on this album.
I love it. This is my favorite song by Mark II, but this is also my favorite Mark II album. Which I know again is not. I'm not doing it just to be contrarian. It was, it sounds like annoying contrarianism, but honestly, when I was getting into the band and listening to these albums, it was In Rock, Fireball, Machine Head in this album, and then a big space, and then Perfect Strangers and Nobody's Perfect, and Made in Japan thrown in there too. All of those were just swimming around in me and my buddy Paul's CD collection, and we were just listening to them interchangeably, not really thinking about the timeline or anything or what came first or what was going on. And it really wasn't until I started doing the Deep Purple podcast that I got into, oh wait, this album is not regarded well at all. Like there's people that like it, but it's basically considered to be the a throwaway album. The band was falling apart. Richie and Ian weren't even in the studio at the same time. All that stuff that I know you talk about on your show that you're not really interested in. You're interested in the music,
right?
And say I'm interested in it, but I didn't have access to that knowledge. And when I found it out afterwards, I think I was more surprised because I think this album's great, and I think it's starting to show the creativity and the experimental sort of stuff that they were doing. Stuff like this and Our Lady and Rat Bat Blue. It was just it sounded like they were taking it to the next level to me.
Right.
And I think there's so many Deep Purple fans that are just like basically after Machine Head, they don't want to know about anything else. It's like, no Richie, Machine Head. There's people that will like Perfect Strangers because that was kind of a standout album.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they died in 1972 to a lot of people. And I've never viewed it that way. I've always loved that they tried these new things. And when they just continue to be more experimental with the next 3 albums and bringing in new members and everything, it just got more and more exciting to me.
Yeah, with the Shoeshine era. Yeah. Well, I agree. And I do find the history interesting, but I guess for me, for the purpose of the shows, at least, I really want to focus on the music because I think it's so easy to get into the history and let that take away from the accomplishment of the music. Like that's what I love about your show is your show gets into the history and all that. And I'm like, I think there's some things that are important to know, like the fact that they weren't even talking during this album, but look at the music they still created in light of the fact that Ian and Richie couldn't be in the same room at the same time and all that. But I like to focus for these shows on the music but those things are important in some cases. But it's like it's those stories are out there and you guys cover that. So I want to go more into the music, whereas you guys go more into the history.
Yeah. And there's a huge nostalgia factor involved in this.
Oh yeah.
For me. So it's hard to separate it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you were with the band year by year as the records were being released, maybe I'd have the same view that a lot of people do. But it's also, there's so much stuff I feel with music that's like common knowledge that, oh, we don't like this album and we don't like this lineup and we don't like that singer, that I think it infects people before they even hear the music. So they go into it with this preconceived notion. And I'm glad that I never had the opportunity to do that. Maybe I would have gone into it with the wrong idea and the wrong, thinking, oh yeah, this is the album that we don't like.
Right.
But I never had any of that. It was just like, well, this was at Strawberries. We picked it up. Let's hear what it is. And we don't know anything about it. And I'm glad because this will always have that really special place in my heart.
Oh, same here. I remember listening to this album, putting my puzzle of hot air balloons together and then taking it apart and putting it back together and taking it apart and putting it back, just because I didn't want to stop listening to the album. I didn't have any other puzzles at the time. That's just life sometimes.
Yep.
That is such a brilliant solo.
Love it. It's one of my favorites, and it's one of the few that I've actually learned that I can play.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's being generous. I have the I haven't played it in a long time, but I'm sure I could kind of pick it out. It's very I mean, if you know the pentatonic scale, you can probably figure it out. But there was like a video tutorial on it on YouTube, and I was like, I'm going to learn this solo because I love it. But yeah, I can't nail all the intricacies that Richie did, because Richie, it sounds like a one-take solo from him, like Hold On or something, where he just like nails it, and you're just like, jeez. And I could take 3 years to try to perfect it and never play it quite that way.
Yeah, I think the only, and I'm not a guitar player, so take that as you will, but the only solo of Richie's I think I'll ever be able to play is Temple of the King. Like as basic as it's ever going to get from Richie.
Yeah, but it's those solos I think that really resonate with you.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and I love the solos. I love the feel of it. But this is it's motion. He's playing a lot of stuff, but it's all within context of the song, and that's what I love about him, is that he doesn't, at least in this era of his playing, he doesn't really leave the context of the song in his solos. In the earlier days, some of those solos really do feel a little disconnected from the song, where he was kind of feeling his way. But by the time you get to Mark II, I mean, he's locked on and playing for the song. And I really like that. But there's another thing going on underneath of this solo. So the solo is panned towards the center, and I know it's hard to hear over the Zoom, Nate, but over on my left ear, there's a whole nother track that Richie's playing underneath of this, where he's doing little flourishes. And it's amazing how he could put that together underneath of that solo and not be conflicting, not play anything that doesn't work well with the solo. I get some of the most brilliant stuff I've ever heard him do.
Yeah, it's great. I'm not picking up immediately on what you're saying with the other stuff that he's doing, so I'll have to listen to that after this and see if I can pick up on that. I think probably because I'm just so focused on the solo when he's playing it.
Well, see, that's what I mean. Like when you're listening to a song, it's like you start locking in on one thing and you know the other things are happening around you, but you're not really focusing on them. You know, like
that's what makes it brilliant.
Yeah.
You go back and listen to the backing track and listen to the drums and the bass and probably hear things I've never heard before.
Exactly. And that's when I'm doing these solo. A lot of times I'll listen to something 3 or 4 times before I comment on it because I want to make sure I'm picking up on all the things, and then I forget to mention 2 or 3 of them.
Yep. Easily.
You know how it is when you're hosting a show.
I do. That's why I love this. I'm just sitting here.
Yeah, exactly. I like when I record with Corey because, well, when I record on one of his shows because he does all the heavy lifting and I can actually just be a guest.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to know it's just like, I just have to be here.
It's nice every once in a while for sure.
You're not alone, but you're a long way behind the time. What we do in full frontal view is more honest than your clean up mind. What I'm seeing, Mary Long, is when you can spare a minute. Go find your friend the pony lord, dig yourself a hole and jump in it.
One of my favorite lines.
Yep.
I've used that so many times on people and they don't get it.
Go dig yourself a hole and jump in it.
But I have to say I was wrong. Roger's actually just playing straight through this. It sounds like he's not going up and down the scale. But we are getting a lot of flourishes from Richie during this last. So there is a build. You know, it's usually Richie and some combination of other people. But yeah, Roger's actually playing the straight route on this. It sounds like.
Yeah, it could be. It could very well be. I love this, and I don't know that I've ever really broken down this section of lyrics, but I love the way that this last section is more of kind of like his appeal to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like trying to make peace, like, hey, you're not alone, you're behind the times, you know, but he's basically saying, we're doing this stuff that you've deemed unacceptable or inappropriate, but what we're doing is more honest than your want to clean up the world from anything that you don't like.
Right.
And then you know, then he says, go find your friend the Porny Lord, which I always thought was Pony Lord when I first listened to it. I'm like, who's the Pony Lord? I just thought it's probably another British thing I don't understand. But he's saying Porny Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, you know, make friends with what you don't like. But then he says but then he goes right back to, hey, go dig a hole and jump in.
Right. Yeah. I always thought it was go find your friends and party long.
Oh, there you go.
That was my original. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So we both had it wrong.
See, I take it as him to say, you know, what we do is we just do what we want to do. You're saying don't do that, and then you're going back and doing it anyway, which is why we're more honest than you. You know,
right.
And that's
you're
why at the end he's like, go fuck
virtuous.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dig yourself a hole and jump in it is, hey, go fuck yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's the translation.
And it's just, he says it in such a casual way. He's not saying it with the anger that you would expect most people to, you know, and that's, I think, one of the greatest things about that delivery is that he's just so casual. Like, you know, I've said my piece. I'm kind of done with you. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. You just said that in the friendliest way I've ever heard anybody say it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm getting from that delivery. He's not like he's not angry. He's just, you know, it's out of my system now.
No shit in a hat, you know.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's great stuff, and I mean, it's so he's such a great lyricist, or I should say, he and Roger are great lyricists, because I never know. You know, we don't know who wrote what. We find out after the fact sometimes that Roger wrote this part or Ian wrote that or whatever. We really don't know for most of it, but the combination of the two, however it's done, I would say the lyrics of this are absolutely brilliant. So calling somebody out, but doing it in a way that's like, hey, I'm just letting you know you're a piece of crap.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
How did you lose your virginity, Mary Long?
I just gotta say too, I love that part that feels like it's slowing down because they start playing slightly off the beat when they're doing those accents. I mean, the tempo doesn't change. They're not really taking you out of that tempo at all, but it feels like it's kind of slowing down the way they do those accents.
and it's the let's say, I don't know if it's the drums or whatever, but it's almost like instead of being bam 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 with everyone on it, it's like bam bam bam.
Yeah.
Like something's behind something else. I just have to listen to it more closely to figure out what it is. But yeah, it's and like you've mentioned on your show many times, like maybe in the studio now they would have dragged all those waveforms so they lined up perfectly to hit the hits. But yeah, there's something about it that sounds very, it's almost like a little behind the beat.
Yeah, and I think when I get to =1, it's going to be interesting to see if I can find any of those points where they're not exactly together. And maybe Bob was like, you know what, let's just record you guys as you are. You're good enough musicians. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be human.
Yep.
So I'll be curious when I get to that and do that critical review and see what I can find there.
I've got at least one song for that I want to sign up for. One that I know nobody else will be interested in, so that's good.
Oh, do it.
When will you lose your stupidity, Mary Long? How did you lose your virginity, Mary Long? When will you lose your stupidity, Mary Long?
I love those fast beats on the hi-hat. They seem so out of place and they feel really rushed even though they're not. And it's interesting because you don't get a lot of counts from Ian like that to kind of keep everybody on, but for some reason they put that in there and I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it's great. And I love how they kind of go into like a halftime slowdown of that same motif we've heard since the very opening of the song. They slow it down to basically halftime. And then we're going to obviously go into this completely out of the blue, unexpected, slowed down, like ethereal sounding outro that shouldn't work at all, but it's great. I love it.
And a couple of points here, I didn't mention it, but a couple of points, we actually get Jon Lord in the background playing the intro again. And it's kind of very subtle behind the music, but it's inserted in there in a couple of points, which I think really thicken up the sound a little bit.
Like in this outro part, or
no, in the parts that we just heard.
Oh, okay.
Just a little bit behind there.
The synth part.
Yeah, the synth part.
Yep.
Which I think is really cool because normally you would have an intro like that and then you would just never hear that sound again and it's kind of disconnected. Right. But it actually does reappear, and I think that's a nice return to that sound. It makes the song a little bit more cohesive because the intro now connects to the song.
100%.
Yeah. I love this part, and there's so much going on here. We've got a couple of different tracks from Richie, one where he's just holding a note, like he's just going da-da and letting that note hang out. Then he's doing like little flourishes in the background that are almost really quiet. And you've got Ian Paice just like, I don't even care if anyone else is in the room. I'm just going to jam and have a good time.
Ian sounds like they got his drum levels for the song and everything was good. And in this part, he's blowing out the meter like his bass drum sounds like it's clipping, you know. It's great. It's like, but you can feel like the air coming out of that hole in his bass drum because it's just boom, boom, boom. He's hitting it so hard.
Yeah.
And John's doing that bam, 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 bam. He's doing this down thing, and Richie's doing this on the slide. He's going up, so they're going kind of apart from each other. And yeah, I'm making a conscious effort because I know the vocal part for this so well, and I don't know that I've ever listened to the instrumental behind it as closely as I have right now, and you're hearing so much interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's really amazing how many layers there are to this, because when you listen to it as a casual listener, you don't really realize all the things that they're throwing into the song. And I whenever I hear something like this, I start thinking about my own songwriting and going, am I really doing enough in my own music?
Yeah, it's very it's something that it could be too much and it could be too busy, but
Yeah.
it just isn't. They always make it work.
It's like they really know where that line is and they push themselves right up to it and then they stop.
100%. Yep.
This is another one. John Mottola would be like, I already know what you're going to say.
I know what you're going to say too. 'Cause it was funny. I listened to the No One Came. No, I'm sorry, not No One Came.
Was that I'm Alone, I think?
I'm Alone.
Yeah.
Because it just came out a few days ago. And right when John said that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I think every time.
But you hear John Lord kick in with those two chords and you're like, what's he going to do? And then we don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. But you hear Roger, I don't think I picked up on until when the fade out happens, other instruments that tend to raise a little bit in the mix where they weren't there before. And what I heard was him the doom 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 doom. He's doing that, and its bass sounds really distorted when he's doing that. And I think it's just that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But and what Pace is doing to me sounds like a very he's almost playing just like a freeform jazz. Like if you told me he recorded his drums with Alone, I would believe you because it's like he's just like like you could hear if you just put an upright bass and a piano player, that would just be a jazz trio playing. But you don't have that. You've got this distorted electric bass, couple tracks of Richie, and this cool organ, and then of course with Ian singing, just kind of bringing his vocals higher and higher and these long whereas what you said earlier, he's doing this very staccato, No One Came speaking sort of thing.
Right.
In the end of the song completely makes it up by just singing these long held out notes.
It's almost like he's got a fever and he's just like, kind of moaning with pain or uncomfortability. But, I was thinking about this when I was listening to this, and I don't know if anyone's ever in history made this comparison, so bear with me.
Okay, that's my favorite kind of comparison.
It reminds me of the end of Jesus Christ Superstar when he's on the cross and they're mocking him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. Not my favorite part of that, but I think this is, I like this better.
I don't think that was Jesus's favorite part either.
No. It's very, I mean, it's beautiful. It's wonderfully done in that they capture just how miserable and awful that whole thing is.
Yeah.
But it's very disturbing and disjointed to listen to. But this is more almost like a more rhythmic version of that.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I do not know, and I'm thinking more, I think it comes out more on the movie soundtrack version, but I don't know what they did in the recording to make the crowd sound that way. But whatever that effect is,
like all those like kind of chanting, and it sounds like it's the effect. It's like that like a really quick delay,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has always been, like, even as a child, I remember, like, that is the most uncomfortable thing to listen to. Not just because where you're at in the story and what happened, historically or whatever, but the sound that they created was the most amazing, haunting thing there.
Yeah, it's very unpleasant, but that's what they're going. It achieves exactly what they're going for. If they were like, this is going to be a great upbeat, feel good song, then you'd say, well, you failed miserably.
Yeah.
But I think they accomplished exactly what they wanted to with that.
I can't believe that they never attacked that in the era of churches attacking music for backward masking. Seems like that would have been like a prime thing to. Maybe they didn't find anything, but seems like
I
that
think they were. I think they didn't get that far into the album. I think they were already upset enough about the whole premise. They're like, we're not going to make it to the second to last track.
What do you mean Judas is black? Everyone was black.
No, haven't you seen the picture of the white guy with the rock star from the 70s Jesus look?
Oh man, but this is such a great song. I mean, this is really a masterclass in writing and performance, because when you really dissect it, all the different components that are going on, the way they contribute to the song, the layers that they're busy, but they don't intrude. And I think that's the key thing to Purple's music is they can throw a lot in there, but they know how to balance it in a way that nothing really steps on something else's toes. You've got Ian Pace basically doing a drum solo, and yet it doesn't intrude on the music. It actually goes very well with it. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, but it all works. It's all cohesive.
I think you put it perfectly when they find like the absolute limit and they push it to that limit, but they never seem to cross that line that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like, this shouldn't work. Should be too much. This should be too busy, but it just works beautifully together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how you would ever go out of your way to create that. I don't know how you could set out to make that happen. I think it's just those things where they go, I want to add this in there, put me on another track, and I'm just going to record this real quick, or I want to do another backing track, or whatever. And it just works. I don't think it's anything that you can necessarily plan. I mean, you can, I guess, in maybe music that you're writing by hand, where it's a little easier to line everything up and make sure that you've got a balance. But when you're just playing and you're doing it by ear, when you're jamming and writing these songs, you can only play one track at a time. Richie can't play 3 different tracks doing 3 different things at once. He's great, but he's not inhuman. So it's like, this is all studio ideas. And to be in the studio under the pressure of recording, hey, we're paying for this. We got 2 more hours. You guys got to get out of here and go, I'm going to put another track on this, and come out with this brilliance is just, it's stunning.
I think the only way you can do it is if it happens naturally and they had that chemistry. I don't think you could force something like this. Yeah. It would sound that way. It would sound forced. It wouldn't work. But this is just, I think, I don't want to make it sound bad, but I think it's just unconscious to them. Like, this is just like, I don't think they certainly never thought about it as much as we're thinking about it right now. They might have recorded this whole song in a shorter amount of time than this episode. But they knew what to do. They were all veterans of the stage and studio, and just, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and we're going to jam together on that, and okay, on to the next thing.
Well, I always go back to, I think, what the biggest draw for me is, at least to Purple, is that their music is honest. I don't think they really set out to try to be anything. They've said many times, like, we write what we want to write, and we hope that, we like it. We hope you guys will. But, other than when the record company's like, no, you need a single, go write us a single. And they're like, all right. And you get Black Knight out of that, Yep. But they themselves, down to, if we don't feel like smiling and you're taking a picture, we're not going to smile. I don't care how many times you say cheese. They are who they are, and that's it. And I think that's part of the magic of it. And I think when you do that and your music is honest as well, I think you're just going to get, when you do that, when you go with that mindset and you have musicians that are this good, then you're going to get songs like this. And You're right. You can't strategize it. You can't, because it always sounds contrived and planned. I feel like Richie is somebody who just plays very much in the moment. These little flourishes that he throws in there, I think it's just, he just closes his eyes and this is what he's feeling as he's hearing the song and as he's a part of it. I don't think he's like, okay, I'm going to play these notes the next time this comes up. I think it's just, here's what I'm feeling right now. Boom.
Yep. I think that's him to a T.
Yeah. Except for the rare planned solo like Highway Star or, Spotlight Kid or something like that, where obviously certain things are planned, especially when he's syncopating with a keyboardist. But apart from that, I think that's part of the magic. And we don't lose that so much with Tommy or Steve or Simon, because I think they're all kind of in that same school.
Yeah. None of them are, I mean, they're all obviously phenomenal, but they're all very improvisational.
Yeah. And I think that really works. And I think they're not afraid of that red light being on and saying, I have to be perfect or whatever. I think they're just like, I'm recording the song. Here's what I feel. Boom.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. Well, Nate, I can't thank you enough for joining me for this episode. I know you're going to be back here really soon, and I'm already looking forward to covering another one with you. But, Deep Purple Podcast, God, congratulations. You guys have been doing this 5+ years now. And
6+ years now.
Is it 6 now?
Yeah,
Holy
right?
shit.
Crazy.
Wow. And never missed an episode. You guys are so creative with the ideas you've come up with. I've been fortunate enough to be a guest on some of your I would say more creative episodes.
Oh, it's because of you.
Well, thank you. I think was the first one I think was the what if scenarios, I think was my first episode. And I think my second one was the Deep Purple game show.
That's funny because the what if thing, like I had just as a whatever, I had made, we had talked, I think one of them was like, what if they had made the album as Mark IV?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what that is because it's 5-6 years ago. I don't remember, but we talked about cherry picking songs from Private Eyes and the White Snake album and Pace Ashton Lord and Glenn Hughes' Play Me Out, and making like a playlist, like imagine if Deep Purple playing these 8 songs or whatever it was. And I had made some album covers, and it was a mashup of like the Deep Purple logo and the faces from like Come Taste the Band with the Play Me Out album cover or the White Snake album cover, and calling the albums those. But anyway, recently those have started to kind of make the rounds on Facebook. I've seen people posting them after like 5+ years later and being like, does anybody know where this came from? And it's like, of course it says like Deep Purple podcast on the bottom, but it's like, this, because it says Deep Purple, but it says Private Eyes or whatever. So it's interesting that those have been like floating around very recently.
I think there's something about, when you have a band that you love, no matter how much they give you, you want more. And, like, oh, there's another live album I didn't hear about, or, oh, there's this, bonus track. I mean, I know they've got stuff they've recorded that we will never hear. And I hate that. I hate the fact that Hans Zimmer wrote 2 hours of music for Gladiator that's sitting in a vault somewhere and no one will ever hear it.
I know.
When you love something, you can't help but to want, and that's just a compliment to the band, really.
Mm-hmm.
But now go make those albums, Nate.
Yeah, that part's a little trickier. I can make a playlist very easily, but it's thinking of a song like Blind Man or I don't know, anything Post Toasty or whatever, just picking any random song from one of those projects, but brought to Deep Purple, and you can hear it sort of if you close your eyes and really imagine, like what would it sound like? Because this song is missing Ian Pace and John Lord, but this song is missing Tommy Bolin and David Coverdale. But you could hear some of those songs really working, and you could do the same thing with like John Lennon solo and Paul McCartney solo. Like, what if Maybe I'm Amazed was done by the Beatles? What would it sound like? Probably pretty similar, but there's songs like that where that level of the magic is missing because you don't hear you can't hear it with the actual original band playing it. But
I would say I would be a lot more interested in hearing Ian Gillan sing Blind Man than I would Spit It Out.
I want to hear both.
Well, thank you so much, Nate, for joining me. You guys have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.